Coming up on Network Africa. Mali says soldier death toll in Tacit attack has risen to 42. Sierra Leone officials confirm police officers killed in Unrest as ECOWAS condemns violence. Plus, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken meets Rwandan President Paul Kagame in Kigali, expresses concern over human rights situation in the country. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Tenyola Shubowale. We begin in West Africa, where authorities in Mali says 42 of its soldiers were killed in an Islamist attack on Sunday, raising the death toll from 17. Officials say a further 22 troops were wounded, while 37 militants affiliated to the Islamic State group were killed. The attack took place at Tezit, a town in the troubled region where the borders of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger converge. It was one of the bloodiest to afflict Mali in a 10-year Islamist insurgency. Thousands of residents have fled the area, adding to an estimated 2 million displaced by fighting in the wider Sahel region. Mali has declared 3 days of national mourning. Meanwhile, Mali's interim president, Colonel Assimi Goïta, says he has held a telephone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to Mr. Goïta, both parties spoke of the Russian Federation's support for Mali's political transition and also praised the quality of their partnership. On Tuesday, Mali's Air Force officially unveiled several new combat aircraft supplied by Russia during a ceremony presided over by Mr. Goïta at Bamako's International Airport. The Soviet-era warplanes are the latest batch of military deliveries from Moscow on the close ties forged between Russia and Mali since the Sahel states suffered a coup in August 2020. And over in the Democratic Republic of Congo, security forces are searching for more than 800 prisoners set free by armed rebels. The army and other sources say two police officers and one rebel have been killed in the assault at Kakwangura Central Prison in North Kivu Province. About 50 of the escapees have been recaptured. Fighters of the Allied Democratic Forces, a group linked to the Islamic State group, are being blamed for the jailbreak, which reportedly freed a rebel leader. The group has killed thousands in the eastern DRC. Also, the elections in Kenya, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has commended Kenyans for observing peace during the polls. In a statement, he commended the Electoral Commission and Kenyan authorities for ensuring that voters were able to exercise freely their right to vote. He has urged politicians and voters to be calm and restrained as they wait for results. More than 65% of the country's 22.1 million voters turned up to vote on Tuesday. The polls body is yet to provide the final turnout figures, but the initial estimates suggest a decline from the 2017 election, when 80% of the registered 19 million voters turned out to vote. Meanwhile, 4 Africa-based election observer missions have been given their preliminary report at a press briefing in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Former Tanzania President Jakaya Kikwete, who led the East Africa Community Mission, says voting day was calm, peaceful and orderly. He praised the Electoral Commission for its management of the elections, saying his team was satisfied by the way the poll was conducted. His comments were echoed by Dr. Mulatu Teshome, who led the Intergovernmental Authority on Development team. He, however, added that the postponement of the poll in 2 counties had caused anxiety and uncertainty. The VOA's Mohammed Yusuf is in Nairobi. He joins us now for more on the program. Mohammed, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Mohammed, if you can hear me, why is the election count taking so long?
Thank you. The reason why it's taking so long, IEBC, the Electoral Commission, it has to go through 46,000 forms, and all these 46,000 forms are from the polling stations, and all this 46,000 polling stations have announced their own presidential results at the polling stations, and they have submitted those forms to the IBC portal. And now what IBC or the Electoral Commission is waiting for those physical forms to arrive in the headquarters in Nairobi. Some started arriving. And so because of the history of Kenyan electoral violence, because of the issues surrounding the presidency, they're very careful with these numbers. And that's why they've been telling Kenyans, you have all the forms in the portal. You can go ahead and count, but we are the final people to announce the result. But for us, we are going to wait for those physical forms to arrive here and to go through those forms actually physically one by one, 46,000 of them, and that's when they can make those results, presidential results, official. That's what is taking so long, and it's going to take, of course, it's 48 hours since the polls closed on Tuesday. Is this the IBC started receiving these forms, actually some of them today. So it's going to take a couple of hours or days actually to know who won the presidency.
And how are Kenyans feeling amid the wait?
Yeah, it's generally the country is calm. Of course, there's been some skirmishes in some parts of the country because there's also other electoral positions. Candidates will be the governors, senators, members of parliament. There's reports of violence in those surrounding those seats, but generally surrounding the election result of the presidency, it seems that people are calm. But this sort of anxiety is kicking in, and people are not so sure. Some people started fearing, of course, and generally the streets are very quiet. People are at home watching televisions and waiting for the results. But to be fair, the people seems to go on with their lives, even though most of them are at home. But generally, Kenya is calm at the moment as we speak.
I'm quite interested in the reactions from the top contenders as well, as you know, as everyone waits for the results.
Well, it's surprising. It's 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday today, and we haven't had any. The main challenges, of course, that is the Deputy President William Ruto and our former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Preliminary results, of course, from what Kenyan televisions are showing is that we're seeing a difference of about 40, 50,000 difference in numbers so far. Ruto taking us a slim sort of a lead. But we haven't had any, actually. They haven't given any statement, both main candidates and main competitors in this election. And by the time, of course, like this in 2017 election, it was just few hours after the polls closed, and that's when Raila Odinga was addressing the country and saying, look, this election has been rigged, and there are people playing around with the ciphers and giving their own figures, and these are not the figures of the Electoral Commission. But this time around, we're not seeing that. The Electoral Commission is also very, very careful this time around, and they have already told people the forms are there. It's for us to announce the winner, but for us, we have to wait for all these forms to arrive in the capital, and that's the only way we can give final result. And of course, when are we going to have the result? Tomorrow, again, Saturday maybe, but IBC has 7 days after Tuesday's vote, of course, to announce who is the winner of this. And of course, the other sort of constitutional means someone has to get, of course, 50% of the vote. And since Kenya has counties, which is 47 counties, you have to get 25% of the 24 out of the 47 counties. So it's a way through to go a lot of process for now. But generally, Kenya is calm, and I think the Electoral Commission is doing its work, and Kenyans are quite so far satisfied with how the IBC has conducted this election. But the result has always been a problem for Kenya, and this time around will be interesting also to see how Kenya will be reacting to these results.
All right, then, Mohammed, a lot to keep our eyes on. Thank you so much for the update. Meanwhile, speaking on elections in Africa, former Nigerian President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan has highlighted the importance of political education. Speaking in Nairobi, Kenya, while monitoring the general elections there, Dr. Jonathan says for elections to be done seamlessly, there must be adequate training. He travelled to the East African country as a member of the Election Observation Mission of the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa.
The political education is critical. Unfortunately, election is not what you do every day. My chairman will, if it is something you do every day, you will have competent people that will be derived the process. The presiding officers, the deputy presiding officers, and the polling clerks. They will have been well educated. But you do once for Kenya, you do once every 5 years. My country, once every 4 years. In Liberia, once every 6 years or 7 years, 6 years. So sometimes even the trained people, by the next round of elections, you may not even get the people that have gotten that training before. You have to recruit new hands and train them again. The key thing is that training and adequate training is required for all the electoral process, even the security people. For election to be done seamlessly, that means that people must be adequately trained.
Away from political matters, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has expressed serious concerns about the human rights situation in Rwanda after talks with President Paul Kagame in the capital, Kigali. Mr. Blinken says he had raised U.S. concerns about the detention of Paul Rusesabagina, a permanent resident of the United States who is credited with saving hundreds of lives during the Rwandan genocide of 1994. Rusesabagina was sentenced to 25 years in prison after being convicted of terrorism. Mr. Blinken says he also discussed with Rwandan President Kagame credible reports that Rwanda continues to support the M23 rebel group in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mr. Blinken made the remarks at a joint press conference with Rwanda's Foreign Minister, Vincent Biruta.
I discussed the credible reports indicating that Rwanda continues to support the M23 rebel group and has its own forces inside the DRC. We recognize that Rwanda has security concerns of its own, including reports of cooperation between the Congolese military and the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, the DFLR, an armed group. My message to both President Tshisekedi and President Kagame this week has been the same. Any support or cooperation with any armed group in eastern DRC endangers local communities and regional stability. And every country in the region must respect the territorial integrity of the others. The United States has the same message for all neighboring countries. We've seen where the failure to respect these principles can lead in the immeasurable consequences of decades-long conflict in eastern DRC, which has taken the lives of more than 5 million people and displaced millions more. Coming out of the discussions, both presidents have agreed to engage in direct talks with each other. They're both ready to resume the talks in the context of the Nairobi process with armed groups, and both welcome the continued U.S. engagement in support of African-led mediation efforts.
Rwanda is not the cause of long-standing instability in eastern DRC, where we have over 130 armed groups, including the M23. And the presence of the FDLR and the close collaboration with the army of the DRC has always been the most significant cause of insecurity. And this enables the FDLR to conduct terrorist operations on Rwandan territory, something government of Rwanda cannot accept. And Rwanda will always reserve the right to take necessary measures to protect its integrity, its territorial integrity, its sovereignty, and to ensure the security of its people.
And still ahead on the program, Ethiopia says a second turbine of a controversial dam over the Blue Nile has started generating electricity. More details in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Back here in Nigeria, the United States Consul General William Stevens says it's committed to improve the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Nigeria. The Consul General made this comment when he paid a courtesy visit to the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu at the Lagos House Marina. He says the U.S. will continue to partner with the Lagos State and the federal government in the area of security, education and entertainment, which will create a conducive environment for businesses to thrive.
We're focused on three primary sectors. First and foremost here in Lagos State, as the Consul General, trade and investment, promoting bilateral trade and investment, helping Nigerian companies export to the U.S., U.S. companies export here, U.S. companies invest here, and Nigerian companies investing in the U.S., which raises all of our prosperity and helps us to improve relations, because those kind of economic relations are really the foundation of any partnership. Secondly, we're focused on security. As the governor mentioned, we're focused on ensuring that we're working together with Nigerian organizations and law enforcement to combat transnational crime and help make the people here safer and more secure, which actually is directly connected to trade and investment. And finally, we're focused on the human concept of our relationship: health, partnerships in democracy and governance, preparations for the upcoming elections, everything we can do to ensure that the people here in Lagos State and throughout Nigeria have an opportunity to live healthy and safe lives. The partnerships that are forming between American and Nigerian entertainers, both in film and in music and across the entertainment industries, we're learning from one another. And as you of course know, Nigerian musicians are global stars, and they're partnering with American global stars to make incredible music. And we often joke, right, let's make music together. And it's already happening, and we're so proud at the consulate to support Lagos State and the folks who are behind the Headies that will be happening in Atlanta for the first time in just a few weeks. I know that we've worked tirelessly to try to get visas for the nominees and the performers and the presenters so they can get there. And I think it's just an excellent symbol of what is a great partnership in the creative industries.
The 11th Mongolian Armed Forces Infantry Unit has been highly commended for their peacekeeping work in South Sudan. For 20 years, Mongolian peacekeepers have consistently contributed to peacekeeping operations globally.
Sergeant K. Dava Inyam from Mongolia stands tall amongst her colleagues, ready to receive a Medal of Honor for her tireless efforts in South Sudan's Unity State, where she has been serving for about a year. She is now completing her second tour in South Sudan. This will be her third peacekeeping stint in a career that she has previously served in Sierra Leone.
Under the theme of this year's International Peacekeepers Day, which was People, Peace, Progress, the Power of Partnerships, your proactive posture has been exemplary, supporting the mission's peace efforts and in strengthening our partnerships. You contributed to the construction of dikes in Bentiu at the height of the floods, and your deployment to the temporary operating base in Abiemom and Mayom helped to show the presence of UNMISS, assured of security and strengthening the engagement with local communities. Mission leadership appreciates the increasing deployment of Mongolian female military personnel, given the relevance to the work with vulnerable groups, and we've observed the expansion of the civil-military cooperation, which is improving trust, securing the trust of the people we are here to serve.
The contingent's large female participation was recognized.
You have been the linchpin for the mission to achieve its mandated task here in this area of complex dynamics. Total 66 female peacekeepers of the unit brought perspective with regards to the female emancipation in the area under the banner of United Nations mission in South Sudan, which is quite commendable indeed.
Sergeant Kir Dava Inyam is proud that the Mongolian military has made it a priority to deploy more female peacekeepers as their work within the communities they deploy goes an extra mile.
Female participation in the peacekeeping mission is important. When I go on humanitarian missions, engaging with the females in the community is very easy. This is why I can understand what they need and tell my commanders about these needs.
So far, close to 10,000 Mongolian peacekeepers, including over 900 female personnel, have participated in peacekeeping efforts in South Sudan.
And over in Sierra Leone, the country's information minister, Mohammed Yusuf, has confirmed that the lives of security personnel had been lost amid mass protests that hit the country on Wednesday. Some protesters were also killed on the third day of violent protests that have taken place in the capital, Freetown, as well as several other towns. Protesters are rallying against the high cost of living, corruption, and police brutality. Some are also calling for the president to step down. President Bayom is currently out of the country with his family and has left Vice President Mohamed Jallow in charge. The Vice President announced a curfew on Wednesday in a short state broadcast. Meanwhile, leaders of the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, have condemned the violence. Sierra Leonean journalist Ahmed Saheed joins us now for more. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
So what's the situation on ground now? Has calm been restored?
Yes, relative calm has returned. There are movements of people and vehicles, private vehicles and commercial vehicles, but not as you will have on a normal business day. Shops and businesses are still closed, except for one or two areas that businesses are open. But calm has returned. There are people moving about, but there is still some atmosphere of uncertainty in the town, in the capital especially.
And we know a number of people have been killed, including police officers. Do we know the exact number of people who have lost their lives?
Yes, well, interestingly, just about 30 minutes ago, the Sierra Leone police just released a preliminary report titled Destruction to Property and Loss of Lives Occasioned by Violent Protests on August 10, 2022 in Sierra Leone. And they mentioned fatalities and injuries to police personnel, government, and police property. But interestingly, they didn't mention any civilian casualty. But from unconfirmed reports that we have yesterday and on social media, we learned that about 6 civilians were also killed. But for the police, according to the release they just put out today, they said 4 police officers were killed nationwide, and 4 also were injured nationwide. And then they also mentioned property that were destroyed, government property, police stations that were vandalized. And that's according to the report that it just released about 30 minutes ago from the police.
All right, the president is currently out of the country with his family and has left the vice president in charge. Amid the violence, has there been any word from him yet?
Yeah, the president was out of the country, and so the vice president was in charge, and immediately he declared a curfew yesterday from 3 p.m. to 7 a.m., and now the curfew continues today, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But interestingly, the president arrived yesterday, returned to the country yesterday, and he tweeted last night, and I'm going to read that for you. He said, as a government, we have the responsibility to protect every citizen of Sierra Leone. What happened today was unfortunate. That was on 10th August, and will be fully investigated. I urge all Sierra Leoneans to be calm. That was the tweet from the president, His Excellency, Brigadier General Madam.
All right, then, Ahmed Saheed, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
And now Ethiopia says a second turbine of a controversial dam over the Blue Nile has started generating electricity. The $4 billion mega dam has been a huge source of controversy between the East African country and the two downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan, that depend heavily on the Nile for their essential water supplies. It's expected to generate more than 5,000 megawatts of electricity upon completion. Despite repeated talks, there still hasn't been a binding agreement among the three countries. It's not clear if they are going to return to the negotiating table soon and whether the latest development will have an impact on that. Cairo and Khartoum want a deal on the management of water and mitigation of possible drought, and were angered that the dam started filling before an agreement was reached. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shuboale.